Hello and welcome to round 9 of the Trak Racer GT series live on Apex Racing TV. My name is Sam Fitzpatrick, alongside me is Daniel Leach, Scott Newton operating the cameras this evening. And we're here for the final enduro of the season, round 9 of the championship. And it's a championship, as we say every week so far, Daniel, dominated by Trak Esports and by particular Ross Rizzo. I was looking at the points earlier on. He's won all of the enduros so far this season. And that means that he doesn't even need to turn up tonight, because he can drop this week and still have a perfect score. It's been an incredible run of form for him in these enduros. But they have provided some of our best racing so far this season. It will be fascinating to see if anyone can stop this remarkable winning run for the Australian.
Yeah, good evening, Sam, and everyone tuning in. Great to have you back again for the final round of the Enduro Series tonight. But it's going to be a tough ask. I mean, Rizzo has been in fine form over the course of the championship so far. Obviously, he's going to want to extend the winning ways that himself and Trak Esports have been able to do so far this championship. But as we were talking about off the camera, Sam, it's a race that he doesn't technically need to win. He can still utilise as a drop round and still find himself in a good position towards the back end of the championship. That being said, I would be highly doubting it whether Ross would want to take the foot off the gas and let someone else come through. I no doubt as the racer at heart, he's going to want to try and get up on it. And so far, looking at the times that they're putting through in warm-up at the moment, setting some very comfortable pace in that Ford GT.
Yeah, we've already had qualifying, of course, a couple of splits tonight. Thanks for tuning in for this one. And you can see it is night. So only night race of the season. I believe I wasn't around at Sebring, but I believe that was during the daytime. And I don't think we're visiting Daytona this season. So just going to be at night is this one. Apologies, we did visit Daytona, didn't we? But was that... have we visited Daytona? I'm not quite sure. But this is, I think, our first night race of the season. But it's not a conventional night race, I'd say, Daniel. Whilst this place is decently lit up, you can see the floodlights around the track. There are some sections of the track that kind of point to the right-hander, kind of turn 3, if you call it. These are a couple of double apex corners, but the straight coming up into the right-hander, that's a little bit of a dark patch, and there's a few other dark patches as well. It's not as easy as, say, Daytona to find your way around this circuit in these conditions. So it will be something that the drivers would have had to got used to in practice. Yeah,
definitely. And there were quite a few practice sessions put up over the course of the week for everyone to get familiar with the circuit, and some interesting takeaways from that. Obviously, the track very slippery out there tonight, so a lot of caution for all these drivers out there. But you're right, the lighting conditions are going to be very different and a little bit more of a challenge for these guys. There's obviously a lot of lighting around the super speedway. The back section of this circuit, not so much, especially as you say in turn 3. Then we've got turn 7, 8, 9 up towards the hairpin. There's not a lot of light where the old pit lane is there as well. So that'll be a little bit interesting, but surely we'll see a lot of guys utilising that. That being said, some fantastic looking liveries out there tonight with all the lights on, and especially those 4 GTs tonight.
Yeah, the neon lights on the side, you can customise what colour you have. You can have like green or purple or red or whatever. Looks really cool on the car. So that is the positive. As we will have a short formation that we line up on like the alternative grid. I believe there are layouts on iRacing which use that alternative grid, and we can see the grid up for you now. Craig Edwards gets pole position just ahead of Ross Rizzo, who's been lightning in qualifying in recent times, although that's not necessarily his overall strength. But Edwards would be delighted with that. Rarely gets poled as Edwards, actually, so that's a good effort. Simon Nicholson, once again, superb in qualifying, up in third. There's Nathan Hupperts, who's been in good form. Trent Thomas lines up in fifth. His temperature has slightly gone downhill recently. There's Timothy Beeben. Tom Huggan could qualify for him in 7th, and Martin Crisp rounds out the top 8. Then it's James Glaspool. Jesse Butler up there in 10th place. Christopher Hughes, a miraculous qualifying for the rookie driver. I don't think I've ever seen a rookie driver that far up the grid. He lines up in 11th. Then it's Byron Phillips. Just behind him, Robert Christel, Chris Weitzel, Aaron Specchier, Michael Whiting, Paul Warwick, Shane Bowen, Chris Pellets, and John Hughes round out the top 20. Behind that, it's Blake Delaney, Nicholas Gavroche, Hayden Smith, Grant Madiford, Lee Cogan, and Scott Forsyth. And at this 26-car field, we just split. Only just. I believe there were 62 cars. Although, judging by the fact that there's 26 on the grid, maybe there's a few less. Maybe that includes the stewards as well. It's moving it up to 60, so it wasn't quite enough to put them all in one split. So a slightly diminished field, but that could make the racing all the better. And we got Edwards and Rizzo, the two championship contenders. Edwards really has to win this race. It doesn't matter too much what Rizzo does with the drop score, but Edwards needs to start pegging back some points. Drivers move through the final chicane. We're about to get 90 minutes of racing underway under lights at Motegi. And we are away racing for the first time this evening. Huppers with a superb start. He's going to be able to put pressure on Rizzo, but he's going to be looking underneath him as well at Nicholson. It seemed as though the drivers on the even side of the grid have got a slightly better launch further back in the field. Good driving on the most part. Rizzo with a good drive coming out of the first corner, and he's right on the tail of Edwards, not brave enough to go for a move. I think that's Huggen in the Ford GT, just going for a move down the inside. Didn't quite have it for him, but now there's contact, and that was Huppers, I think, with contact with Nicholson. That was third and fourth. And Huppers, who had a brilliant start, he did what he needed to do, got up into third place, was on the tail of Rizzo, and looks as though he could help out his teammate. Hasn't turned out that way, and he has gone sliding down the order already. So Edwards and Rizzo with a big gap already of 2 seconds back to Trent Thomas. I'm sure we'll get a replay of what on earth happened down at that second corner on the opening lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone just sort of tripping over themselves as they work through those tight little section there, and unfortunate for Huppert to get involved in that. No doubt we'll check that one out as it comes to hand, but he's going to have a tough night coming back through the field with everyone working their way through. Chris Whitesell closing up on the back of the Ford and the hands there of Byron Phillips, and he's got Chris Hughes, who is the leading rookie at the moment, right behind in the XRC Porsche as well, so a good start from these guys a little further down.
Yeah, 4-place game for Whitesell, 4-place game for Gavroche, at 22 down for Huppers. So far, it's a long race slope. I'm expecting a safety car, maybe, because it is used extensively for bikes, is this track. That's Hughes off the circuit, and that's what I was just about to say, used for bikes, and so there's usually quite a bit of runoff and a bit of gravel, albeit gravel much more likely to reach the barrier if you're on gravel than you are on tarmac. Such is the kind of dirt model on iRacing, very slippery off circuit. Has some brilliant MotoGP races over the years here. Many championships decided, of course, as the circuit is pellets. And considering that these guys are in quite a small field, which usually reduces the amount of incidents, Daniel, and these guys are usually very smart in these races, a remarkable amount of mistakes so far in these early stages.
Yeah, a little surprised to see some of the contact that we have so far on. I know through the practice sessions we did earlier in the week, the track really, really slick, and guys just touching a little bit of a tyre off to the side, you're instantly into the sand and the dirt, and around she goes. So it's going to be tricky conditions out there. I know from the laps I did in the Porsche there, it does take a little while for that car to definitely come up to attempt to get the tyre pressures up and be good to go, but a little bit of a tardy start from a few of these guys. Hopefully now they'll get into that rhythm. Looks like the train's really starting to extend out a little bit. So there's a lock-up just back a shot there, and they should be able to get back into their rhythm and move their way forward now.
So I think we're going to be able to see a replay now of the Huppers incident, and this has really turned the race on its head because Huppers was going to be dangerous. So that's a bit... So has Huppers lost it by himself? He has, so I was ready to judge and execute the driver who I thought had hit him in the first place, Simon Nicholson. But no, it was Huppers just with a self-mistake. This will be, cool tyres. That's a little bit of a weird one, because these cars have traction control, Daniel, albeit they won't use it to a maximum effect. You want some kind of feeling still, and you want a little bit more control. So it is possible to spin up the tyres a bit, but that seemed like a remarkable amount of wheel spin. It just seemed like he put the foot down and it all got over the top of it.
Yeah, a little bit of a tricky one. I don't know, maybe if there was a touch of brake still being applied that might have ultimately rotated that car around, or if you say just just picking up the throttle there that's sending him around. But yeah, pretty awkward spot there to go around. Nicholson really with nowhere to go in that situation. Unfortunately, did make contact there with that car of Hubbard's, but both those guys still working their way around the circuit. Tim Feber now up on screen. He's got Martin Crisp right behind for XRC Racing, and these two have gained a couple of spots as a result of that contact early on. Feber up 2 spots, Martin Crisp up 3 spots, and then Jesse Butler in behind these guys and starting to close down, also gained 4 spots along the way. So some movers in the midfield already.
Yeah, a few changes so far. Reminds me that we've got 2 pit stops coming up for these drivers. One of the pit stops you have to take tyres. I mean, 2 of them you can take tyres if you want, but the degradation ought not to be that bad. I wonder if we could get track conditions up on screen actually. Just see kind of what the temperature is for these drivers. I don't think it's going to be particularly insightful because I think in night conditions it can only ever really get to about 23 degrees, and then it is 20 degrees, and the coolest you can get on iRacing I believe is 18 degrees track temperature, which all the Brits perhaps watching along, thanks for tuning in this morning, will know that that's not very realistic when it comes to this time of the year. Albeit, to be fair to iRacing, they do change it to 18 if you change the date, so thanks to them. Hagen, I think just got overtaken by Whiteson. Hagen having a tough start. He's down 3 places as top Hagen. Not necessarily usually a great qualifier, so it's not as though he's outperformed himself. He's just struggling in this race at the moment, albeit that Ford does a great, and that's the side, and that's a hit into a wall for Simon Nicholson, who was in with a chance of really helping his pro championship chances. Not anymore. He's gone hard into that wall, and I wonder if that is going to be recoverable for him, or whether he's going to have to take back to the pits and trigger a safety car.
Yeah, it looks like he has managed to get that car now moving. We're going to take a quick look at the replay to see what happened, but Whitesell looked to be trying to get a move done on Hagen down through 1 and 2. It's a bit of a tight corner there because double apex as you go through, and he's managed to sweep the BMW through, but Hagen with a good run on the exit here. And just keep an eye on Nicholson just in the background, the second Ford there in line. It's a good run through, similar to what we saw for Nathan Hubbard. So gets through the mid-corner fine as they work their way up on Whitesell with a bit of a jink, and then Nicholson just collects that outside grass off the curb there, and that's a hard hit into the wall, and a lot of damage going to be on that car.
Almost certainly being put off, I imagine, by the off from the driver ahead, just opening up his steering. He could still get a decent result out of this, Nicholson, to be fair. Just pit now, get the damage fixed, and then you can easily get to the end of the race with just a couple of stops from here. I believe, actually, I say that with an unwise amount of certainty, because these drivers are limited to the amount of fuel that they can carry, I believe. No, sorry, I think they can go the full distance, can't they? I think they can just go a full hour. I don't think they're limited on the amounts of fuel that they can put in the car. Of course, pick setups in this championship as well, so everyone will start with the same amounts of fuel. It doesn't mean that you have to pit at the same time, though. You can pit a little bit earlier, or you can stretch it out. Theoretically, the fastest strategy is because you'll be running on less fuel at the end of your stint. But in terms of track positioning, in terms of tactics, it's a lot more complex than that. These cars not too weight sensitive. You can afford to come into the pits with quite a bit of fuel left over. Paul Warwick in 15th place. And this is actually for the lead in the rookie class. Roig has been catching him quite significantly. And Warwick, who had a pretty good start up a couple of places. Christopher Hughes started an astonishing 11th place on the grid in the rookie class, but he's down 10 places. He's been involved in a crash, and that's why these two are now leading.
Yeah, and he's still doing a pretty good job here. Just looking at the sector times for Groich, he's managed to pick up a few here and there, and just through that mid portion of the circuit, 1.8 tenths of a second there, so nearly 2 tenths of a second advantage. So the BMW looking pretty handy in that twisty section, but just struggling maybe a fraction on the back half of the circuit last time by. But these two certainly in for a really good haul of points. They're not that far off the guys ahead, Shane Bowen, only 0.8 of a second further up the road. So they could definitely get into this little mix and see whether they can get up themselves amongst that and not too far outside that top 10.
Looking a bit odd on our timer screen, Crispin Theben. Has there just been a change of position for Crispin Theben? Or has that been the same way round so far? We might get a replay of it. Our timer screen weirdly was saying how Theben was closer to the leaders and yet was back in position. Or maybe he was further away from the leaders at another position. This is how it happened then. So our timer screen took a little while to update. And sliding off the track at turn 1 or turn 2. Not a big fan of this circuit, and that's one of the reasons why. What's a corner? What isn't a corner? These first few sections are quite complex with that final section of corners as well. Quite tricky to pinpoint. But Theben, a mistake for him. He's down into 5th place. You can see on the timing tower, the top 3 starting to pull away from the rest of the order. This is looking entertaining though. Butler and Glasspool and Phillips. And actually Theben just ahead of these drivers then, but he should have the pace to pull away. Theben on that last lap was about 0.4 of a second faster than the drivers who now sit on his tail.
Yeah, watching the guys there go through that tricky little section, not too bad for all those 3 up front. The gap still sitting just around that 1 second at the moment. Edwards has been able to extend a little bit of an advantage over Ross Rizzo. And keep an eye to Trek Thomas just in behind as well, the second of the Trak Esports cars out there tonight. Just currently sitting in that 3rd position. Pretty quiet run for him. He's got a huge amount of air front and behind. So should be able to set some nice laps there. And Rizzo really now starting to get into the advantage that Craig Edwards currently shares. So just sort of a 1/10.5 last time by, a little bit quicker. So these guys are the only cars at the moment down in that 146 range. Everyone else seems to have stepped back to around the 147. So just trying to look after their tyres. And Sam, I did have a quick check too, just in regards to our fuel strategies as well. So for the Enduros, the guys can start with the 100 litre of the max fuel capacity in these cars, and then obviously take those subsequent stops later on and get the fuel into it. So obviously we do have the 2 stops. The tyres are mandatory, along with a compulsory secondary stop as well for these guys. So that'll be an interesting strategy mix that the guys will want to undertake tonight.
Yeah, and of course with that 100 litres, that'll take you to an hour anyway. So the drivers have only got to put half an hour fuel in 2 pit stops, so those stops aren't particularly long, and that's why the tyres are mandatory. I'll say that I know I'm just brainstorming here, but it would be pretty cool for next season, because I think we've had this enduro format for a few seasons now. It would be really cool if just 10 minutes before the race, you pull a configuration of pit stops out of a hat, and the drivers have got to do that configuration. So there'll be lots of different combinations that you can do. I know, I'm just brainstorming. The AMF stewards write what I'm saying down. It could be inspired. We do host our own leagues as well, do a Face Racing League, so we could just test it out ourselves. But AMF so far have done a brilliant job of administering this series. Of course, the 11th series of the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Championship, of course now named the Track Racer GT Series, and it continues to grow season on season. Really did help as well during the summer. Took advantage of the lockdown. We were having over 100 drivers sign up, but this season consistently 2 splits. I don't think we've had a single race which hasn't had 2 splits, and it's been a real testament to the organisers and to the drivers. So it's been really good so far this season. We're currently watching John Hughes in 24th place, although Nathan Hupp has just moved up into 17th place. So I'll put my teeth back in. He's ahead of Blake Delaney now, which he'll be pleased about. Harper's making quick work on these drivers. He is lapping half a second a lap slower than the race leaders, so I imagine that's just him getting held up in this traffic.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like that damage either on that earlier lap 1 incident has slowed him down at all, so he's able to make some good pace at the moment. The lap times will definitely come back as he works his way through this traffic. He's got himself a nice little bit of air just ahead to start stretching the legs now of the C8, but definitely been a very tough season for Nathan, who we've seen on the podium a couple of times in recent events, but just struggling a bit. Here's a look at how he managed to get the C8 past, and it's on the way up to turn 5, I believe, so a little bit of an overshoot there for the Porsche, and Nathan able to drop straight in and gets on with business. So that's probably the simplest of passes you'll make out there tonight, but got to take those opportunities when you can get them, as Geroich, Bowen and Warwick now all start to line up for a bit of a fight across the start-finish line.
Yeah, Geroich trying to take advantage. Wasn't quite the space on the inside there, so there's that Warwick getting past Bowen then, because of course Warwick and Geroich were right with one another, so Bowen just dropping in place seemingly there. And Geroich for JP's Simshed, trying to get ahead now. It's not quite good enough exit. That turn 4 does seem to, or turn 2, does seem to be a tricky corner. And Delaney with another mistake, and it's costing a bit more. So he's down into 21st position. That's a shame for him. Plenty of lock cuts, plenty of kind of slides for these drivers at the moment. It's not an easy circuit, this, by any means. So going to the kind of sweepers section, lots of hairpins around this track. This is kind of where you can see the downforce of the GTE cars. Warwick staying clear of Bowen. Here's an opportunity for an overtake into this final section. Warwick not close enough. And of course, Huppers will be catching up to these guys rapidly, and it's only a matter of time till he passes them, or he's probably about a second a lap faster than all three of them. Also, Phillips has just got past Butler. That's for 7th place. Byron Phillips there for the 8 in the 846. He is privateer up into 7th place, and that does look nice in these night conditions.
Yeah, doing a really solid job to continue his progress forward. Here's a look at how he managed to get that move done. So it was out of the hairpin on the alternate pit lane there. So Butler just down the line. Butler going a little bit defensive. I wonder if maybe Butler had a slowdown, because he made that extremely simple for Phillips to get through there. And Phillips would get that move done relatively easily and continues on his merry way forward.
Yeah, I think that was just him being nice. Well, not nice, but in a situation like that, you're thinking about yourself. But I think that was just him thinking, well, no point in losing time battling with this guy. Albeit it would have been nice to see Butler put up a bit more resistance there, because I think he would have had a chance to keep behind Byron Phillips, who I believe is yet to score a podium this season. Has got a few top 10s. To score a podium. This season's been a lot more. Maybe it's just because I got used to the drivers, maybe, Daniel. But would you say this season's been a bit less unpredictable? We've never seen a driver like Rizzo dominate the championship. I mean, for the past few seasons, I don't think a driver's won more than 3 races, heck, more than 2 races across the season. It's been that unpredictable. This season, I'd say we've had a bit more of an established running group, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it means that when there is surprises, it's that much more fantastic to watch. But would you agree with that, or do you think it's just been as unpredictable as ever?
Look, I think it's been a yes and no. It's been a little bit of both. I mean, we've had some very established drivers who say continue to run through this championship as we watch this battle for the top 2 continuing on. So we've got all our usual suspects up here, so the top front runners all the time. The biggest change that's come out this season has been the adjustment on the balance of performance week in, week out, which is really throwing up some interesting results. Obviously, we've seen quite a few different weight penalties applied to different cars out over the course of the season, but it's really spiced up the racing, as we see Nathan Huppert in the lane to knock over his first stop. But that's put a whole new different equation into the mix. Obviously, the guys now have got to get used to that little bit extra weight that's on the cars, and to throw that into the mix, along with the driver talent we have, it's been a remarkable run so far for Rizzo to have taken as many race wins on succession as he has. So everyone else now looks to have managed to close that gap, especially for Craig Edwards now, who's sitting comfortably that 1 or 7/10 of a second clear at the moment. He's really got on top of the C8, which was only a new car this time when the season took place, so a lot of adjustment for these guys to get used to, and it's been phenomenal to see the guys adapt and change onto this, but really looking forward to seeing what we're going to get for these final few races of the championship to ultimately decide who's going to win it. But we might see some different winners up the front tonight.
Yeah, perhaps so. Yeah, and a few established names perhaps not here. Remember, Trak Esports winning every round of the championship so far, 8 out of 8 for them this season. Edwards shockingly hasn't got the race win. Shockingly hasn't got a championship win for a little while. Again, Daniel, you'll have to correct me on this one, but at least in recent season, I don't think Edwards has won a championship despite always being in the top 3. He's very consistent driver. Always gets a race win or 2 across the season, and of course was runner-up last season as well. But yet to taste that silverware. Taste that silverware? You don't usually eat silverware. Maybe if you're up in a Nadal, you bite the trophy, but I doubt Edwards will be doing too much of that if he did manage to get that wins trophy. But at the moment, it does look like he's going to be runner-up unless Rizzo has a poor final few rounds. Remember, Rizzo already with a perfect score in these Enduros. We've got 4 Enduros, and you can drop your worst scoring one. Because Rizzo's won the other 3, you can imagine you drop this one, whether he wins or whether he crashes out. It doesn't really make much of a difference. However, Rizzo can take away points from Edwards if he does win this race. Edwards will score less points, so that is something for Rizzo to think about. In case, and of course, he would like to keep that winning record up. He has won the last 4 races in a row, I believe, has Ross Rizzo. Only Trent Thomas, the only other race victor so far. And also one other driver as well for Trak Esports getting a race win. 10 seconds now between first and fourth is spreading out. It's continuing to spread out at the moment. The order, the closest battle is probably, actually we've got Whitesell now right on the top of Huggen. I think Whitesell just came past Huggen. These two have been battling for a while. And Whitesell, I think, went off the circuit, didn't he, earlier on at turn 2 or 4? I'm going to have to get a track map up now. But he failed to get the overtake on the first time. He has managed to get the overtake done this time. Chris Whitesell in the BMW up into 9th place.
Yeah, these two not being separated by much at all. That little wiggle that we saw for Whitesell, that was down off turn 4 there, so just after the second set of left double-handers there for the guys to work their way through. And that was also at the same point we saw that Simon Nicholson go hard off into the wall as well, so he had his own little issues along the way. Whitesell very defensive down into turn 1. This could be a good run for Huggen here if he can keep the momentum up in the forward. He's going to try the long way around it. Just doesn't have the grip or momentum to get that one closed off. But just want to touch back to Craig Edwards, has been a defending series champion. Took the title, I think it was 3 seasons ago now from memory. Then ultimately lost that one to Tim Phoeben, and then we saw a new champion take the reins last season for Fisher Motorsports, and haven't seen, unfortunately, too much of that driver at all, which is a little bit surprising, but that was actually Josh Thomas, sorry. So surprised we haven't seen him much in the championship, but this could be another strong run here for these two. And at the moment, Rizzo champion-elect, still with quite a few races left under his belt, but Craig Edwards really shone through at this back half of the race or season.
It's just an off for Chris Pellet, by the way. I just saw a car in the background going very slowly. Pellet had a bit of an off. But yeah, I did not realise that. So was that the season when the championship went down to the last lap at Silverstone? Where literally, that was Latimore apparently. So I feel like that was maybe 3 seasons ago. Oh no, there's a lot of history to this. Let's have some sport call quizzes, please. Like I've done with Apex Racing League GT, where you can name all the race winners, which even I struggle with, and I'll commentate on all the races. That's a good revision tactic. Goroich is past Bowen. He's up into 15th place. Bowen drops back another place, still up 2 positions from his start. Into this very kind of strange final sector. I don't quite know how that final sector came into being. It's very odd. Although Marquez, of course, went for a brilliant move a couple of seasons ago on was it on Dobby? I think it was on Dobby, where he went for a dive on the last corner. Didn't quite work out for him on that time, but if anyone's going to make a move there, it's going to be Marquez. There is Goroich though, going for that move up into 15th.
Yeah, a really good solid drive down into that turn 10 corner there, so he'll progress forward, and that's now the 7th position he's gained so far over the course of this race, so a really strong run up towards the top end of the field. Paul Warwick now 9/10 of a second up the road, and looking at the pace he's got at the moment, definitely not short of going to be able to close down that gap, so look for him to work his way further forward. So Martin, Chris, Tim Phoeben starting to heat up as well, that battle for 4th position, as these guys drop into just on half a second at the moment, separating the two, and following that little incident that we saw from Tim Phoeben where he got a little jink in the car and ran off through turn 2, he's been able to recover quite nicely and close that gap down to Martin Crisp, who himself has had a pretty standout drive tonight, not put a foot wrong, and this is really similar to what we saw from Martin at Indianapolis road course about 4 or 5 races ago.
Garoich with an off. And Garoich was... he was behind Warwick, wasn't he? So he was 2nd place out of the rookies and having a very good race. He was losing time to Hughes. Oh, has Hughes... Was this Hughes behind him? Or was this Bowen? I think this is Bowen behind him. Oh, well, it's by himself anyway, so... and then, of course, you got to try to get up the rev so you don't bog down when you get back on the throttle. Shame there. Huggan and Christel randomly losing place, but I think that was just a connection issue maybe for Whitesell. Butler under big pressure now from Whitesell. Oh, Whitesell goes wide. Has had a couple of offs as Chris, who's was quick up there. Up 5 places is Chris Whitesell, but yeah, just a couple too many mistakes at the moment. They are coming across a back marker as well, and that would be Chris Pellets actually, who's quite sure why Pellets so far down, but this won't be helping his chances either. Having to slow down almost to a halt in order to let these drivers past. And Butler just with a little bit of respite for now. This is the battle for 8th place right now.
Specchio and Whiting getting amongst it. These guys now scrapping over 12th position. Whiting with an interesting line through the S's there, just trying to keep the momentum up in the Porsche. Specchio closes up nicely under brakes through the little hairpin there, and they'll fire up to the 2nd hairpin just ahead. And looks like we're going to see Whiting already trying to park that Porsche just a little bit in towards the middle. It's a tight apex to get the car back around. And not much separating either of these two guys as they work their way around lap 16.
I'll say it's whenever I think of this circuit, I never think of it. I don't think of it necessarily at night. I apologies. I keep on being up MotoGP, but that's really my only experience of this track. I know that it hosts Super GT and many other series, but it's always wet around here. It just seems to rain quite a lot around Motegi. Will be fantastic when we get rain on iRacing in the next couple of years. And just when we cut to them, they're going down that steep downhill hairpin, and that would be absolutely insane in the wet conditions, especially in monsoon weather with the rivers down there. That would be quite a challenge. It's a challenge anyway, but that would make it even more tricky for these cars. Spiccio, if anything's going to have to look in his mirrors. All these guys seem to be outbraking themselves constantly. They always seem to be surprised when the driver ahead hits on the brakes. When I was saying the cameras out here, there are remarkable amounts of trackside signs, which make the cameras a little bit less good than what they could be, because you constantly got signs in the way. So they should be able to reach a braking marker pretty easily, but these guys aren't having an easy time of it, especially it does run a little bit wide for him, Warwick with a poor exit. And they've also got Bowen and Hughes catching up to these cars, isn't it? This midfield battle is extending. And look at Warwick again, he's almost like a harpoon into every single one of these hairpins, taking an early apex, almost trail breaking it in, but I'm not quite sure if that's the fastest way to get round.
No, it looks like he's really compromising that initial turn-in point, trying to get the car up as quick as possible. But he's going to just need to think about maybe the strategy here, try and flow that car a little more through the corners, and he should be able to close down the gap, because his teammate just ahead in Michael Whiting has managed to do a similar thing and really start extending that gap now over Specchio. And While we're looking at these cars go around, just quickly touch on the BOP adjustments for this race as well. So the BMW, no weight added. The Ford GT, which you can see there for Ross at the moment, 20 kilos on it. The Ferrari was 17. And we do have one sole Ferrari out there, currently down in the 20th spot. The RSR Porsches, 15 on board those cars, and 5 kilos added to the C8 tonight as well. So the weight penalty hasn't really slowed down our top three, as surprisingly the top two, which seem to have the most amount of weight going out there tonight, have really been able to extend over the BMW with no additional weight.
Yeah, that's do you think that's just a characteristic of the circuit, that there's not enough straights, or maybe it's a small sample size that maybe just the BMW driver's not enjoying this circuit as much? I mean, Edwards and Rizzo are probably the two best drivers in this championship, so it's not totally surprising that they're pulled away. Yeah, the BMW, though, to be fair, from a racing standpoint, I think we saw it a little bit earlier, but I think when Hagen and Chrisdale maybe were battling with one another, or maybe it was Hagen and Weitzel probably, the BMW was pulling away despite the fact that the other driver was in the track. From a racing standpoint, it is possible to keep drivers behind you, even if it isn't necessarily the fastest car out on track. So strengths and weaknesses for all of these cars. Rizzo getting very close now to Edwards, and Edwards has got to be a bit careful here, and he'll be, I imagine, a little bit disappointed. I think a little bit excited as well. Hopefully it will be Edwards. He's an experienced driver, and I'm sure he loves a nice battle like this. We're already a third way into the race. Wow, it's really flown by so far. Yeah, third the way into the race. And Rizzo seems to have just picked up his pace as the event has gone on. There's been no stopping him so far. Perhaps just saving a bit of fuel now, Daniel, but at the same time, I mean, you can always lure your opponent into a false sense of security. You can sit behind them for, 10 minutes, saving fuel 0.2 of a second behind, and then all of a sudden just go for a dive and then pull away after that. So I think it's best for Edwards to keep track position here, but I think you've got to say that Rizzo is the favourite for the race win right now.
Yeah, Rizzo looking really handy at the moment. Last time by was his personal best, so a 146 nearly dead, which was the quickest car out on circuit, almost dipping into that 45 range. So I think the car's really come to him. It seemed like the Ford, definitely probably one of the better cars so far over the course of this championship, and Rizzo's really managing to exploit that car and its characteristics exceptionally well for his driving styles. We've seen him work through the final couple of corners before they get up to the front straight. Not much between either of these two, and Rizzo's just starting to get those mind games going. He'll sit in behind where possible, and if he can keep just applying the pressure, and we've seen it already over the course of the championship, it is possible to knock your competitor out, and potentially we might see Edwards with just a small lapse of judgment, and that'll be all that Rizzo needs to go through.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the timing tower for that one. But this is still falling over. Gurich just dropped back, or maybe Gurich is still catching up, but it's a long train this. All behind Whiting. Yeah, Whiting's better. Tries to find a pun. There's got to be a pun in there somehow. But Specchio looks quite likely to overtake, half a second behind at the moment. Of course, just a reminder as well of the stripes next to the drivers. The purple is the elites, and that's the top class. You kind of have to be quite an established driver to be an elite, although the numbers of them have increased as we have so many top drivers in this championship, so many drivers who have taken race wins. And then the green is the pros, the amber is, or the orange. Oh, Speedman's moved up into fourth place. The orange is the amateurs, and then the red is the rookie. So that is why we have all those different stripes and championships for each of them. Chris was actually stayed ahead of Beeben then, who managed to get ahead. I wonder if he went for a bit of a dive into the left-hander and then left himself vulnerable on the exit, but he's going to go for it again. Not a whole lot of defense here from Chris, but late on the brakes. That's some good defending there from Chris. Very much just facing his line and saying to Beeben, well, if you're going to overtake me, you'll have to outbrake me. And Chris stays in fourth place would be one of his best results of the season. I believe he got 3rd place at Indianapolis, but that's the only time he scored better than this.
Yeah, definitely. Indy was a real standout drive for himself and Simon Nicholson up into that very last handful of laps before those guys managed to get involved in a little bit of team contact as Paul Warwick now dives in the lane to knock over his first stop. But certainly making that forward very wide on circuit is going to really make Tim Phoeben fight to push his way through and gain that next position up. The lap times, there's absolutely nothing between either of these two as they continue around again. And Phoeben's going to be wondering now, where does he look to put this car down the inside to see whether he can make this move? Because he's tried it, the hairpin, he's tried it, the bottom 90-degree corner, that turn 13, not able to do it. And he just doesn't seem to have the pace through the S's here to set up an option. So going to be maybe looking at what he can do pit stop wise, whether he can cut that strategy down just a fraction and jump through the pit stop, or if he can get a good run through here up in towards the hairpin as he goes down the inside. He's going to try and get this move knocked over now.
That was a decently far way back. He wasn't catching much during that, and I think this is exactly what we saw or at least we saw the back end of it on the last lap. And even cannot get past the game, but now he can dip into the draft. He's got to commit to this one. It's not a massively long straight. There's no mega long straights on here, but there's lots of kind of medium length straights. He glances down the inside. He's not going to really go for this one. No, he will. Here he goes. That's how you do it. Triple Eight up into 4th position. Still a little bit alongside, but he is now clear. Crisp backs out of it. He's down into 5th place. But yeah, nice move there from Bieber. It didn't really look like he was particularly full of confidence there down the hill, judging on the previous lap. But that time he commits to it. He's up into 4th place. And that's taking a while to get back to 4th place. Our turn off about 20 minutes ago is about 20 seconds late behind the race leaders. A few drivers have come into the pits, by the way. Now got Whiting come into the pits. We've also had Grant Madford into the pits. Humperts came into the pits very early, and actually that's worked out pretty well for him, as one would expect, seeing that he is one of the fastest drivers out there. He's going to be able to leapfrog a lot of drivers. Will probably be up into the top 10 or Humperts by the time that everyone makes their pit stops after coming into the pits in about 16th place. Also Warwick, Nicholson after that damage, Forsyth and Pellet all coming into the pits. I wonder if Whiting, actually, I wonder if we could get cameras on Whiting, whether or not he'll be ahead of Warwick. This could be pretty close because I think they were in that big battle just previously, and it will be Warwick then ahead, and that is because Whiting is taking tyres. So I think that's the logical thing to do, is it not, Daniel, to take tyres at this point in the race? We're almost at midway, and you should have a good bit of speed for the next 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, it'll be a bit of a tricky one. I know the Porsche does take a few laps around here to come up to temp, so he's going to need to press on with this rather quickly, get the most out of those tyres while he can, and hopefully it looks like he's popped himself out in a little bit of clear track position. He should be able to make the most of that situation and the fresh tyres there. Further down, Hayden Smith and Blake Delaney now starting to get into their own little scrap. 16th and 17th, not too much between either of these guys, and a good run here for Hayden in the right sim racing car. Looks to be the only right sim racing car out there tonight, and doing a very solid job. Gained 7 spots since the start of the race, progressing further forward up the field.
Yeah, very good drive so far, although I guess he will lose a couple of places when it comes to the pit stops. What was his last lap? A 48.1. Yeah, not great there for Smith. He would have been hoping to start closing that gap on the gaggle of cars just ahead of him. Kogan now into the pits. I expect a lot of drivers in at the halfway stage of those to take those tyres. So if we haven't told you enough, Garoich is off the circuit again. Garoich, is that Garoich actually at turn 1? I think that is. And he was a while away from the circuit. There you go, he's almost on the oval there. And that's tricky to do. He's back on now. Across this circuit. I'm sure most people know, but you can see it for yourself. There's an oval around it. Unfortunately, the oval it isn't on the track, as there's Garoich, but the oval does run over the road circuit, which is quite cool. That's why we have a couple of tunnels around the circuit, or a couple of bridges And it's a cool feature, very much a unique circuit. I think built in the 70s, with no Peter McKay, but I'll try to get out some trivia on this track. I believe it was built in the 70s. It hasn't quite caught on, this concept of circuit, with the Roval. It did host IndyCar, I believe, or some kind of oval series for a year or two. But yeah, the oval really in disuse now. The road circuit still pretty much, it was still used for a lot of different series. And of course it scans on iRacing as well. And it's very nice we have it on here. I don't know about you, Dan, I'm not a big fan of this circuit, but this race has warmed it to myself a little bit, as the racing has been pretty good up to this point.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting circuit. It's one of those you love it or you hate it ones. I'm a little on the fence here at the moment. I have had some good results previously in it. It's a fantastic circuit, similar to like Sebring for testing of car setups. Obviously, you've got some straights, you've got a lot of heavy braking zone, a lot of left and right, some really good momentum corners. So, you know, where a lot of drivers will use Sebring to get your suspension set up, this is another good one just to leverage the platforms of these cars. So I think it's partly why we're seeing such good racing tonight. Everyone's really on top of the game here as they're continuing to work through as we tick over the 40-minute mark. But yeah, look, I don't mind it. I think it's quite an interesting one. That gap up first to second, still hovering around the half to 6/10 of a second. So guys work their way around down the back straight here. This is lap 23. So head down towards turn 13, and not much separating them still. So will we see pit stops potentially from either of these guys in the coming laps?
Yeah, perhaps could do. Yeah, I mean, what Edwards doesn't want to be left. He doesn't want to be the second one to come into the pits. He wants to take the initiative, I think, Edwards. He doesn't want to let Rizzo kind of have control of this one. Albeit, at the same time, if I was Edwards, I wouldn't come into the pits until Rizzo came into the pits, because I wouldn't want to come into the pits, take a load of fuel, and just give Rizzo a complete, you know, free track, just a pound fast lap after fast lap in an overcut. So it's between a rock and a hard place at the moment. Or Edwards. Rizzo will be saving fuel behind him. Will be able to take a little bit less fuel at his pit stop, as we've got Hughes and Specchio into the pits. Almost half our drivers now, about a third of our drivers have now taken their first pit stop. Bit of a lockup as well, but a driver just ahead. But yeah, tricky situation for Edwards to be in. Thomas still only 5.2 seconds behind these guys. And credit to Trent Thomas, I think he's been absolutely driving the wheels off that thing so far. He's giving his absolute all. He's been by himself this entire race pretty much ever since we had that incident for Nicholson and Huppers in the first few corners of the race. Problem for Thomas is that it's just every lap it's 0.2 of a second slower than the race leaders, which over the course of 25 laps does start to add up. That's why he is 5.3 seconds behind. But if we get a safety car, or if there's a little bit of a fight between the two cars ahead, he will certainly be there, and he can still see them just in the distance. I'm sure that's giving him a bit of extra motivation.
Yeah, it's been a really good solid drive there for Trent. I mean, we've not really focused on him too much. We've left him to do his thing out there, and he's continued that form of just driving the wheels off the car, very under the radar, and still picking up fantastic points, and for his, not only his championship but also the team's championship for Trak Esports. So doing a really solid job. The lap times are very competitive still. He's only 0.2 of a second slower than the guys ahead of him. Martin Chris now diving in the lane to get his first stop, so that'll actually release Tim Feeman to get on with business for momentarily. But no, Trent doing a fantastic job. Not much between any of the sectors for all of those top three. He's just plodding along, which should be a nice haul of points if he can keep the car where it currently is.
Yeah, that team's championship is quite a tight one. I did load up the points a few minutes ago. Costas Rizzo and Craig Edwards top of the elite drivers. Huggins actually third place out of the overall drivers, which I didn't quite realise. Huggins been that consistent, and whilst there's been issues for like Huppets and Feeman, who of course fought for championships, plus Feeman is a former champion, And of course, Chintos and Michael Healy has also won races so far this season, but not attended every round. That's Huggins up in 3rd position. The former amateur champion, I believe, was Huggen. So Huggen and Chris going for the Pro Championship. However, Huggen with a decent lead in that. So he looks confident to take that title at the moment. And then we've got Jesse Butler a long way ahead in the amateur championship. He's got Michael Whiting, his nearest challenger, but that's 4,000 points to 3,000 points. So that's almost sewn up, to be honest, for Jesse Butler at this point of the season. Actually, if you take into consideration drop scores, it's a bit closer, but yeah, should be strong for Butler. As Rizzo comes into the pits, he's the first one to blink then, and it's at the halfway point of the race. When we kind of expect drivers to come in. This is the theoretical fastest route to the finish. And then in the Rookie Championship, it's between Paul Warwick and John Hughes. And there's literally barely any points between those two. They're pretty much tied. And so whoever comes out on top between Warwick and Hughes will be leading their championship after this round. And at the moment, Warwick has just lost out to Nicholson. So they are now line astern out on circuit. So do keep an eye out on that one. That is very tight. And of course, we've got 3 more rounds of this Track Racing GT series to come after today. Hughes now goes up into 20th place then and drops Hughes down a position. And if we had a championship, a theoretical championship up on screen, then it would be going absolutely mad because Vecchio's just overtaken Hughes as well now.
Yeah, that was the teammates just switching positions there, so continuing on their merry way. Just had a look too as Rizzo has now rejoined the circuit. He did take tyres that time by, so it was 40 seconds stationary, just over a minute transit time. And for any viewers on the YouTube channel, remember if you do want to check out the live timing scoring links to the SDK Gaming software there, you can pull up the track map and the current live time if you want to check in to see the gaps as the guys work their way around the race. But he's come out in a pretty good spot. He's on the back of a little train just ahead of him between Delaney, Smith and himself there, so he'll be able to work his way through those cars still yet to come down the lane for their respective stops. However, Craig Edwards now has returned serve and he's dropped in to complete his first pit stop tonight as well.
Yep, covering him off. I think that's a smart tactic from Edwards. Just do what Rizzo does, try to keep track position. This will be close though because he was probably within half a second, wasn't he? So might just be worth Edwards taking a little less fuel. But then that might leave him vulnerable later on. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in the car. I'm glad, well, hopefully Edwards has got some kind of pit engineer to tell him how much fuel to take. Rizzo will try to make this move. Will he actually go for it? Yes, he will. So this will hold him up a little bit, but only use him a couple of tenths. Let's see what's going to happen then here, because of course this will still probably come down to whoever had the best pit entry. It's such a tricky pit entry here that you can gain upwards of a second if you absolutely nail it. As is it out of the pits? Yeah, Edwards trundling down. Now picking up some speed is Edwards, and he is ahead, and he's got a bit of a gap then. So Edwards was stationary for 33 seconds, Rizzo 40.5 seconds. So 7 seconds longer stationary for Rizzo, and that is why we have the gap. So now Edwards has got to open up that gap because he's going to have to take 7 seconds more fuel later on. And so he's got to try to maintain that gap, or realistically, he's got to try to extend that gap. So keep an eye on that one. If it drops below 7 seconds, then advantage Rizzo. If it goes up to 8 or 9 seconds, then advantage Edwards.
Yeah, the other thing too, I think Rizzo might have had a little bit of an awkward entry as well. He was total stationary time, or total transit time, sorry, he was 9 seconds difference. So made a little bit of a bobble there somewhere for a couple of seconds on entry, I'm assuming. So he's got a little bit of work now to do and going to have to get on with business, try and get those laps in as best as possible. He's got a fair gap between himself now and 8th position, which is currently in the form of Shane Bowen. So he should be able to press on, and we'll see what he's able to extract from that car. So we keep an eye here. Blake Delaney back out on circuit after his pit stop. He's got Scott Fife just ahead for Oris Autosport. Pretty quiet run for these two along the way tonight.
I wonder, Scott, if we could get a replay of Rizzo, I believe he made a mistake on the first sector of this lap. He lost 4 seconds in the first sector of this lap, did the former second place man. This might be it. Is he going a bit deep? Oh, there you go. Wow. So it was weird because he came out of the pit 7 seconds behind. Then I suddenly looked at he was 11 seconds behind. So that's why he lost 4 seconds. And that is a massive mistake from Rizzo, because I think realistically he was the favourite for the race win. And now that 4 seconds has made this place very interesting. And he's got to try to close that down now. And that's just a slight lack of concentration. Dip a wheel onto the grass. Stood on the brakes. And yeah, he's got a bit of time to Edwards. 11 seconds. I remember he needs to get that gap down to about 7 or 8 seconds in order to be within range when the pit stops are complete. So it's going to be good between these two drivers. Rizzo, I guess, taking pretty much all of the fuel he needs to take. So Rizzo might be out here now for the next half nine. He might literally pit with just 10 minutes to go, I imagine.
Yeah, I think we'll try and see him run that car as long as possible. Admittedly, we may see a safety car come out as well, in which case that'll throw the gates wide open. We would expect everyone to come through. We've still got 5 drivers as well yet to come down and make their first stop tonight. Those being Trent Thomason, Phoeben, Byron Phillips, Jesse Butler and Rob Crisdale. Currently 1st to 5th yet to make their respective stops. So look for those guys momentarily to come through. We'll keep an eye as to where they will cycle back through once those pit stops are completed, but still working another lap. Rizzo getting back up to speed. He's starting to close back in. It was a great time last time by for Craig Edwards, personal best for him, and actually the first driver now to dip into the 145. So he's really trying to make hay while the sun shines and get on with business.
Yeah, really great lap that. 45.8. What did Rizzo do? Oh, 45.8. There you go. He was 1/100th of a second slower. So if Edwards didn't break that fastest lap, then Rizzo would have done anyway. So pretty much matching each other right now. Pretty much qualifying, lads. This is an exciting race. Whilst they're not on the same piece of circuit, then it's still very good at that. Huppert's into the pits for his second pit stop. So he didn't take tyres, I believe, Huppert's at his first pit stop. So he's like, well, I've just got over halfway. May as well come in now, get some new tyres on. I think bad news for Harper today. He's going to have some overtakes to do later on, because I think he'll catch up to quite a few drivers. But of course, new tyres in that car, he should be past them quite quick. Trent Thomas into the pits now. This could be interesting. I wonder what Thomas will do here, whether he'll take the same amount of fuel as his teammate did, Rizzo, or whether he'll take as much fuel as Edwards did, because if he takes the amount of fuel Edwards did, he'll get ahead of his teammate. Only temporarily. I think Rizzo will probably end up ahead of him anyway, but Thomas, might come out in effective second, or he might come out in effective third.
Yeah, there we go. We just see the car raise up on the jack, so this will be his tyre stop to be completed. Rob Crisdale also in the lane as well. You see him firing into the pit stall just a few spots behind, straight up on the jacks to get those tyres done on that car. Edwards, another strong lap as well, just slightly bettered that one. A 145.82 and another PB through the middle sector, a 20.69 as Ross Rizzo continues through. A little bit slower that one though, second off the pace.
Yeah, he needs to be lapping better than that. So that's it's 4 tenths off. That's a bit of time begging there. So Trent Thomas then was stationary for 44.3. So Trent Thomas was stationary for longer than anyone. He was 5 seconds off the race lead before the pit stops. But he was stationary for a little while, so he can pretty much go to the end of the race from here on in. I think Trent Thomas, he will literally be stationary for about 2 seconds when he makes his final pit stop. So still, I think he's going to struggle to battle with Rizzo and Edwards, but he's certainly giving a good attempt. 53 minutes into this race, we're expecting the drivers to be able to go another 6 minutes on fuel. I think that's what Phoeben plans on doing. He'll just extend it for as long as possible here. But in no man's land is Phoeben. Looks as though he's going to be able to get a fourth place here. Although Phillips is doing very well. We've spoken a little bit about Phillips, as Delaney's had another up. He's had an awful day as Delaney today. But Phillips is doing good. Up in second place, he's only 5.5 seconds behind Phoebe. I just wonder, maybe he might be able to jump Crisp when he comes into the pits. Phillips on that last lap of 46.4, Crisp with a 46.7. So Phillips might be putting himself up into 5th place right now with this extended first stint.
Yeah, it's been a really good run there for Phillips, and the Ford's still looking quite handy. I mean, it's been a pretty standout car throughout the course of the championship so far, and Phillips doing a fantastic job. A little slower probably than where he wants to be at this point in time. That being said, last time by was a 1:46.40, so still plenty of pace in it. He's got a couple of guys ahead just starting to battle as well. Those cars well down the order. That's Matterford and Garoich getting amongst it. So doesn't want to have to fall over those guys as they continue their own little fight, but going to have to be cautious trying to work his way through.
Yeah, not worth getting involved in an incident whatsoever. By the way, thanks to Scott for correcting me on this. I think this was a while ago. They sent the message. I've only just seen, but this circuit was actually built in 1997. People don't know about me. When I said the 70s, that's what I call 1997. I call it the 70s, you know. To say that's exactly what I meant. I wasn't quarter of a century out. And it was built in 1997 by Honda. You make pretty good circuits. They made Suzuka, of course, as well. But yeah, of course, it was designed for IndyCar, which I think did host one race here. But I think there was also a race in Britain, wasn't there, with Rockingham, I think, hosting one like karts race or something. But didn't last. But at least this circuit's still in operation, unlike Rockingham, which was scanned by iRacing, of course, and yet has not been added to the service. And once we get Snetterton, we don't get Rockingham, which isn't totally fair. But hopefully iRacing will fix that one in the near future. Nicholson, we are watching it in 13th place. Still got 4 more drivers to come into the pits. John Hughes still yet to come into the pits. Actually, he's in 16th place, at least on my screen. He's yet to come into the pits. Is Hughes? There he is in the 133 car. Not quite sure why Hughes is doing quite so poorly today, to be honest, but must have been involved in something earlier on, perhaps, or maybe my screen is just a little bit incorrect. Maybe he has come into the pits already in this event, but yeah, these drivers really extending it up into 56.5 minutes into the race. Theben still leading the way, but yeah, when he comes out of the pits, Theben, he should be, I guess, just behind Trent Thomas. James Glasspool might not be too far behind him, actually, although Glasspool with quite a short first pit stop. Theben extends it another lap. He'll move on to lap 33 now.
Yeah, he's really getting good economy out of the Mach 1 Porsche there tonight. And good to see him trying something a little bit different, a little bit of an alternate strategy tonight. The 2 stops, catch him going off. It's the old commentator curse right there. Flies it off through turn 1 and 2 and recovers it back on, and he's going to have a bit of work to do now, as that's Byron Phillips now closes right up and could have a chance to lead this race.
Well, no, it's enough now for...
That was Matterford going around.
Matterford, yeah. Good spot. Also, I don't know what was going on with the wind there. I don't know if you saw the forecast or something. The wind absolutely going crazy. I don't know if it's some kind of hurricane, and they do have tsunamis, don't they? Unless maybe I'm reading that wrong. What does that represent, Scott? Yeah, it does represent wind angle. Yeah, it's going absolutely crazy. It's really had quite a range so far. Maybe that's always how. Maybe that's how wind works. I don't know. But I didn't think that's how wind works. I thought it was a bit more constant than that. But yeah, a bit of craziness down at turn 2 or turn 3, whatever you're going to call it. as Warwick and Kogan into the pits for their final pit stop. So we've seen most drivers. So while some drivers haven't even come for their first pit stop, some drivers have already taken their second pit stops. Just showing the range of strategies, and it's good to see because we've had this format for a little while now, and still drivers can't agree on what the best way to get to the end of the race is. There isn't a best way to get to the end of the race. It depends on what your circumstance is. But good to see the variation out there as we see an off for some. Was that wasn't Butler, was it? No, it was one of the back markers, I believe, maybe Nicholas Goroich or someone, but heading off the circuit at the final corner.
Yeah, I think it might have been Goroich or possibly Crisdale. I think probably Goroich at that point going around. Phillips closes back in, the gap down to 0.6 of a second, so these two still yet to do their finals, or first of 2 stops tonight. But this is a really strong drive for Phillips here. We don't see him much in the top split, but it's a real standout run for him. So working their way through like 34, and there's a good lot of range on these cars, just short of the hour. We would expect both of these two now to come in the lane this time by to knock over that first stop. Interesting to see now, though, with just on 30 minutes to go, when the remainder of the field are likely to come down to get their second stops completed as well.
Yeah, I think if you got clear air and you got fuel, you continue. But I think if you try and get out of that, then maybe come into the pits. Hupper's up into 17th. I missed Hupper's for a second now, but oh no, Hupper's is out there. But he is in 17th, and he's actually going to move up a little bit further because Hughes and Whiting into the pits. Will Phoeben and Phillips come in on this lap? Surely the fuel can't go a whole lot further, but it can go a little bit further. They continue. Well, one of them does. Phoeben continues over the hour mark now for the race leader, and Phillips is into the pit. So this could be important for Phillips. Try to get the undercut on the other drivers. He will come out of the pits. I think he'll be behind Huggins still. He'll be behind Huggins, but maybe not that far behind Huggins. He'll try to be as close as he possibly can. Of course, Huggins already with the pit stop, albeit it was a very quick pit stop for Huggins. It really depends on how much fuel Phillips decides to take.
Yeah, just about also in the lane for his stop, or first stop tonight as well. And that will pretty well cleanse our top 3 at the moment. So Edwards, Rizzo and Huggin. Continuing on, we expect Phoeben have to surely be in this time by. I don't think he'll be able to extend the range in that Porsche much more than this. But that will then get our top 3 back to where they were. The gap between our effective race leader Edwards and Rizzo has continued to extend out to 11 seconds now between these two. Actually 10 seconds of that just updates there. So a lot of work for Rizzo, and that quick strategy call and the quicker stop for Edwards really paid dividends this time around.
Yeah, so it's 10 seconds, but it was 11 seconds, wasn't it? So he has brought that gap down a little bit, as we say. Oh, Glasspool is off the circuit. For a bit. Oh, well, actually, that is a spin. That could be costly for Glasspool because he is effectively battling with Phillips, albeit it doesn't look like it because of the different length of pit stops. It's difficult to keep up with everything that's going on, but do load up the live time link actually in the description below, because then you can see the length of pit stops for the drivers, and that's quite insightful for what's going on out on circuit. But Rizzo has brought down the gap a little bit. Remember, he needs to take, on that last pit stop at least, he took 7.5 seconds less or more fuel, did Rizzo. So he needs to get within 7.5 seconds of Edwards. And I feel like he'll have to take less fuel than that as well, because of course he was in the drafts earlier on. So maybe even within 9 seconds he could be. So it's really close. If Rizzo can bring it down a couple more seconds, then it would get into a big grey area where we wouldn't be quite sure of who would come out on top. Of course, as well, Rizzo may have an advantage that he can run longer into this race which will mean that he should be able to be in clear air for a bit longer, and he'll be able to run on some lower fuel. So it's a proper 50-50, I would call it right now, between Edwards and Rizzo about who is going to take this round arbitrage at the final endurance round of the championship. So Glasspool and Crisdale now also into the pits. We've got 26 minutes to go in this round of the championship.
And right on board with Hayden Smith down the downhill. He's got that
Feven.
Shane Bowen.
And Phillips. Sorry to interrupt, but Feven looked like he was off the circuit, and then Phillips went off the circuit as well. It's another mistake for Timothy Feven, and this might just cost him 4th place.
This would have been straight after the pit stop there, so tips into turn 3, and that's similar to what we saw for Ross Rizzo there on the cold tyres, the back end just going around, and gets himself back underway. So fortunately not to get collected by anyone else as he got that car back out, but certainly not helping his chances there on those cold tyres.
And then Phillips got spooked. Now it's dark, but there it is. That's cost them both time there. Yeah, Phillips just tipping away onto the dirt. So narrow through that, and it does left some to be desired how the circuit was designed, particularly that part of the track. But it is a challenge. At least it is a challenge, and no one can doubt that. So Phillips up into 6th place now. That's great news for Martin Crisp, who is looking much stronger now for 4th position, but now Huggen looks pretty good for 4th position. Remember Huggen with that very short first stop. He'll have to come into the pits any moment now, actually, with Huggen. In fact, Huggen hasn't even taken tyres yet. He was like the one guy who hasn't taken new tyres yet. But he doesn't feel like he needs them, so he will have a much longer pit stop later on with Huggen. But even he might be in for a chance of 4th place. So many different strategies. But yeah, what we think at least is that, we've got an off 4. One of the back marks, I think that's John Pugh, so it's actually just gone off the circuit, loses the place to Scott Forsyth. But it should be Edwards and Rizzo fighting for the lead. Thomas will be a comfortable 3rd place, and then we'll have Huggen and Crisp and Phillips all battling for 4th, and then also maybe Nicholson and Theben, and maybe even Hupperts as well could get involved in that battle for 4th position as well. There is Nicholson. Oh, that's hurt his chances, and he's dropped it. He's down into 9th place, and the man who started in 3rd position. These couple of mistakes have really harmed his chances of a good result.
And there's another one down in that exact same portion of the circuit where we just saw Feven and Phillips go around as well. So everyone really struggling, just trying to carry the momentum through the initial turn 3, get the run through forward, just running that car up over the curb, catching that dirt, and around she goes. So not a good one there, as Tom Huggen now in the lane for his 2nd stop. Remember, this will be that long tyre stop for him, and we'll keep an eye to see where he falls back in once that one's completed.
So Hughes pitted twice then. Glasspool is the top of the drivers who have pitted twice. So Huggen will hope to be ahead of Glasspool. I think he will be. Glasspool has currently still got a 3rd of the lap to go. So might just be worth keep getting cameras on Huggen, actually, see if he is ahead of Glasspool. This could be quite close. Here he is on the jacks. Glasspool now just coming into the final couple of corners. Here he is. This could be for 4th or 5th position. Theben will move ahead. But of course, Theben needs to make another pit stop. So Theben's well out of it. With the couple of mistakes Theben's made, he's well out of it. Glasspool, oh, it is close, isn't it? Huggen versus Glasspool. Glasspool's ahead. But it's Huggen ahead of Whitesell and Hupperts. That would be a consolation for him. He is still in 10th place. Whitesell and Hupperts chasing him down, but a few seconds behind still. So it's not too bad for Huggen, but Glasspool now. Maybe he's in line for 4th position. Of course, Crisp and Phillips still to come into the pits. That will be important where those two come out. But Huggen I'm guessing in effective 7th place now, once all the pit stops are complete. Edwards into the pits, and that is as far as his fuel could go. And now Rizzo needs to try to, really pay in some strong laps to try to close that gap.
Yeah, and Rizzo continuing on another lap here, so he should be able to get some good pressure on and see what he can do to close down the gap advantage. Interesting just watching Huggen as he went through 3 and 4, where we've seen all those cars go earlier on their outlap from the pit lane, and very gingerly getting through there and the car staying true, so no major issues. But this will be now the time Rizzo needs to start shining. Edwards down and away, 14 seconds stationary, 41 transit time, so pretty quick stop all in all. Rizzo's going to have to get some really good numbers in now if he wants to try and close that gap and maybe even get up ahead.
Unfortunately, I didn't look to see what the gap was before he came into the pits. Remember, it's all about getting the gap down to 8 seconds. So I don't know how much more time he's got to make. I think it was about 10 seconds before he came into the pits. So Rizzo needs to gain another couple of seconds as Beeben's the fastest lap of the race. Why has Beeben done that? He hasn't even come into the pits recently. Oh, no, he did too. Yeah, of course he did. He pits on the outmark, didn't he? Down in 7th place, there's Beeben. And with those mistakes, probably will not be contending for a top 5 with a couple of spins that he's had. But Rizzo needs to be lapping about 0.2 of a second a lap faster than Edwards in order to get that jump. Remember, we'll need to take a bit less fuel at his last pit stop. It's really heating up nicely. We saw Bruno bats at Barber earlier on in the season, and I think that's probably the race of the season for me. That fight at Barber a few weeks ago. That was another one of those enduros, and it was really interesting because we had Rizzo come into the pits twice under the safety car, despite not being the fastest driver. And he got stuck behind, I think it was like Crisp and maybe another driver for about 40 minutes in that race. And it kind of reminded me a bit of the refueling days of Formula 1, where you could come into the pits under safety car and take fuel, but you would then be held up and would be on more fuel, whilst drivers who stayed out could pull away out in the lead. That was quite a cool aspect to witness. But I think this is right up there because whilst we haven't had the varying strategies for the race win, it has been incredibly tight, just with them absolutely having to pound in lap times and pretty much being racing against each other this entire race. Huggen already onto the back of Glaspool. He's absolutely flying as Tom Huggen. Remember, fresh tyres, of course, compared to Glaspool's probably half an hour old tyres. And Huggen's using that advantage. Well, he's caught Glaspool hand over fist on this first lap. What are the lap times comparisons? 19th of a second faster than that last time out.
Yeah, really good run here from Huggen. He's got those tyres up to speed now and going to press on nice and hard to conclude this race out. He's got an opportunity to gain 2 or 3 positions here because the next car's up for Nicholson, who is one of the team cars, not that far up the road, only 3.5 seconds further up. So definitely a good chance to get up with his teammate and maybe even move past one more spot. Glaspool doing a good job though, just positioning the BMW in the range where he needs to be, just hitting the marks, driving it through nicely and continuing on his merry way. Just doing some quick math too on that gap between Edwards and Rizzo. It's only about 28 seconds difference at the moment. We did see some guys early on in the race with their pit stops sub or just on a 30-second transit time, which I think was Michael Whiting when he came through for his last stop, only 3 seconds stationary in the box. So Rizzo's going to need to pull something like that out now if he wants a chance to close that gap down and maybe even stay ahead.
Yeah, it'll be a quick one. We expect him into the pits in between 5 to 10 minutes. Ross Rizzo, as Huggen with a brilliant move on Glaspool. It looked just on board there, so he had a bit more grip, so he could lean on the tyres a bit more. And against that BMW, you got to get the move done in the corners, and that's exactly what Huggen did. Through the long right-hander, managed to get the inside line for the left and right, and ending up ahead. So Huggen up into 9th, and he's looking pretty dangerous right now, Huggen, with this alternative strategy. Didn't take tyres until well over an hour into the race. That just means that he'll be really quick in these closing stages. Could get that 4th position, which is highly coveted at the moment between a number of drivers. Currently being occupied by Martin Crisp, of course. 27 minutes left of this race. Nicholson into the pits. his final pit stop, and it's a race of what could have been, really, for Simon Nicholson. Qualified so well, as he always does, but you can see him falling down the order. He will gain a few of those places back later on when other drivers come into the pits, but Nicholson in 18th place at the moment, and hopefully he'll be out onto the track quite soon. Well, this is a decently long pit stop for him to finish off the race. I wonder if did Nicholson actually tow back to the pits? I don't recall him actually driving back to the pits. No, he is coming back out now, but that was quite a long pit stop to finish off the race, and he's outside the top 20 now. Really disappointed today for Simon Nicholson.
Yeah, it was only a lap ago too. Just prior to that stop, he was just ahead of Glasspool and Hagen as well. So that's a very costly late stop for him, as Martin Crisp now comes in to complete his second stop tonight. And this should be a relatively quick one for him, also along with Jesse Butler. So a couple of cars getting their final stops completed, which is probably about the time you'd really want to be considering. We're just short of 15 minutes left on the clock here. And the last thing you want to do is get caught out by a bit of strategy game, or especially if we see a pace car come through at this late stage of the race, that could really shake this up and throw out a few strategies.
Yeah, not sure who would benefit from that. I guess Edwards benefit from that, just because it would force Rizzo to come into the pits a bit earlier than he'd want, but also would bring Thomas right back into the mix, wouldn't it, in effective third position. White's ahead of Butler, because Butler's just coming to the pits. Huppert's still behind though. Remember, Huppert spun on the opening lap, then he had to overtake a bunch of cars, went for an alternative strategy, did Huppert, but I think this is going to be a painfully frustrating day for Nathan Huppert, to be honest, because apart from Crisdale, who's right behind him, he's kind of come. Everyone else has come out of their second pit stops within about 10 seconds of him. So I think he's going to finish up as only about 5 seconds off fourth place. But I think we're going to have fourth down to 8, separated by about 5 seconds, and I think Huppert's going to be near the back of that train. So it'll be a frustrating day for Huppert. But what was his last lap time? He just did a 46.4, which is very good actually. Half a second faster than Chris Whitesell. Half a second faster than James Glasspool, certainly further up the road. So he might be able to catch up to Glasspool, Whitesell and Butler before the end of the race. Really good end to this race. Everyone's kind of congregating again. We've got the bats between Rizzo and Thomas, and of course we've got battle from about 4th down to 10th, all closing up as well. Right at the end of the event, as Rizzo just does a 45.76. That's a little while ago, to be fair. As he's already halfway around this next lap, but on that last lap he was half a second faster than Craig Edwards. So he's almost getting ahead. That gap is up to 30.5 seconds now. Oh, this is going to be close between these two. Can Rizzo extend this stint for a couple more laps? Because I think if he can, then he might just have built up a big enough gap to pit and come out in the lead.
Yeah, now we used to see in the back of shot, there's 3 cars, or lap down cars, between himself and Craig Edwards, and Craig is now going to have to get his way through these guys also. So that could come into play, whether or not we see those guys through. Actually, sorry, that's Trent Thomas, who's a little bit closer. So Edwards still got quite a few cars that he's got to navigate anyway to get back, but Rizzo still getting the business. We've still got to see Trent Thomas come down the lane for his second stop tonight as well. This will be another short stop when he does bring that car through, but at the moment Rizzo is still continuing on and the pace still looking very good.
Yeah, if he can continue, he will do. What is this lap for him? Just, I think 45 might be enough for him to get that gap. 46.0 for Rizzo, so a little bit off that time. But of course a lot of it is in the hands of Edwards as well. This is a nice battle right now. So we've got Hagen up in 7th place. I think he's pulling away from these guys. Yeah, he was 7/10 faster than these guys on the last lap. And then you got Glasspool, who seems to be struggling quite a bit out there. His tyres on a while ago, did Glasspool, I think earlier than anyone else. Albeit not much earlier than Whitesell and Butler, but they do seem to be quite a bit faster, and they've also got Huppert's catching up to these guys as well. So, yeah, all catching up to Glasspool at the moment. Phillips and Eben into the pits. Now, this is quite important. Phillips, oh no, we've got Whitesell off. Oh, Chris Whitesell, he was in for a great chance at a top 5. And he's spun it round and given up that opportunity. Phillips out to the pits. He's ahead of Crisp, or is he? He is, and that is for 4th position then. Byron Phillips with a very quick pit stop, and he's up into 4th position. That's what that battle for 4th was that I was talking about before. And that is some good laps there from Byron Phillips. Went long in his first pit stop, and he's ended up getting the jump on Martin Crisp. Nice work there for the now 4th place man in the Ford GT. Yeah, up in 4th position. So Phillips, Crisp, Hugman will be catching these guys with his fresh tyres, 5 seconds behind, but probably a little bit too late for that now. But yeah, Byron Phillips with a great performance today. Starts at 12th, up into 4th.
Yeah, he's done a really solid job there in the Spartan Ford there. So privateer team for him, and continuing on, and see Trent Thomas now dropped in the lane to knock over his final stop. Rizzo's continued on for another lap, and it was another quick one last time too for Rizzo, 45.78. So still pressing on, and only 0.02 of a second slower than his quickest. So getting on with business. Further down the field, everyone else still finding their way in some little battles here. Lee Coughlin, our only Ferrari out there tonight. Sorry. Bit of a tough run, down in 22nd, gained a few spots along the way. He's got Simon Nicholson just ahead of him. And for Nicholson, as you said earlier, Sam, tonight, probably to forget what could have been for him, starting especially as far up the order as he did.
Yeah, definitely. Shame for Nicholson tonight. If it's just a little bit off the circuit, keep it on the track, mate. But yeah, Crispin, so only half second behind him at the moment. How much faster was Hagen actually on that last lap? He closed him by, it's only half second. So, of course, those fresh tyres for Hagen, but he's not catching enough to be able to put any pressure on these drivers. There is the gap with that pit stop really coming down significantly once that pit stop was made. I mean, the big battle now is going to be between the races. We kind of settled who's going to be 4th, although Phillips just needs to make sure that he stays ahead of Crisp now. But can Rizzo stay ahead of Edwards? The gap is 23.2 seconds at the moment. Let's see what this time is. He opened up the gap by another 0.6 on that last lap, did Rizzo. And on this lap, it is a 45.87, so another 45. I think right now, he's probably got the gap that he needs. He only needed to extend it by a couple of seconds when Edwards came into the pits, and he's been consistently, he's probably been on average 0.4 of a second a lap faster for about the last 8 laps or so. So he's been able to extend it enough. And Edwards, 46.6, that's not fast enough. Another 0.8 of a second, and Rizzo is probably going to be clear now, even if he has to come in on this lap, and he might be able to go another couple of laps yet.
Yeah, we do know that the guys will gain a little bit of an advantage going into pit lane here, so that might come into play. 23.5 seconds advantage, though, looking at the numbers, still would put him a little bit behind. I do believe, especially if we're seeing guys going through in that 30-second transit range. So hopefully he's getting enough in the bag. It looks like another quick lap, however, for Rizzo. He continues on that gap now out to 23.7, so continuing to gain more and more. You just see the section times down the bottom starting to fall in the favour of Rizzo. He's already taken just short of 0.2 of a second out this lap. Wait for sections 4 and 5 to continue to flip through.
I mean, Edwards has not really done anything wrong in this race. He's not made a single mistake. In fact, it was Rizzo, of course, who made the mistake as Rizzo comes into the pits. So this is the moment of truth then in this race. This is what we've been touting for really about 40 minutes. Ever since Edwards took less fuel at his first pit stop, we knew that it would come down to this. Rizzo, we expect, will be the favourite to come out ahead, but it will be close. It'll probably be less than a couple of seconds. So Rizzo in the pit stall. He's now trundling down the pit lane. He's going to be out of the pits any moment now. There he is. And Edwards down the pit straight at full speed. But it is Rizzo who has just got the advantage by a fraction of a second, half a second in the end. And Edwards, despite a pretty good final lap there, 46.1, Rizzo had enough in hand, but it was literally down to the last lap, one lap earlier into the pits, and I think Edwards would have had it. But it is Rizzo who is on track for another race victory and keeping up Trak Esports' 100% winning record this season and making it 9 out of 9. That was incredibly close though, Daniel. That is incredible. 1 hour 23 in, and the gap between the two of them is half a second.
Yeah, nothing between them at all. I was just watching as we saw Rizzo drop and get away just to see where he was going to come out as we were keeping an eye on the onboard from Edwards there, and absolutely nothing between them. But this is going to be a little bit of a role reversal. So the whole race up until this point, Rizzo has been the chaser, now becomes the hunted. He's got Edwards right on the back of that Ford GT, and he's going to have to try and now keep the eyes forward, not worry about what's going on behind, press on. He's got 6 minutes still to complete this race, and anything could happen over that time. But he's already starting to gain a little bit of an advantage. The gap now 9/10 of a second. It should be just over 1 second as they head around the last few corners to complete lap 47.
Yes, as long as Rizzo doesn't make a mistake like he did earlier on, he should be home and dry. Does seem to have been the slightly faster driver today. Looked like he was waiting behind Edwards in the first stint, and then was much faster in recent laps, albeit a lot of that would have been due to the fuel, and eventually getting ahead. But yeah, still needs to keep it on circuit. Christel has been fending off Fieben for a while. Fieben, of course, was running up in 4th position. Now it is a massive gap to 4th. Yes, it's only 15 seconds, so we've got 15 seconds separating 4th down to 11th. That is close. That's really close. Fieben losing plenty of time behind Christel at the moment. Can he go for a big dive? Remember, quite fresh tyres for Fieben. He came into the pits after an hour into the race, so he will have fresher tyres than Christel, but cannot get past at the moment, despite the many hairpins, but despite the many hard braking zones we have around this circuit. It's Christel who remains in 10th place as they tick over another lap. Bowen into the pits. That's a bit of a strange one. It's not a strange one, it's just come in for a second pit stop. Not a great day for Shane Bowen so far. He'll drop to outside the top 20, I imagine. It will be a very short pit stop. Phillips still being kept honest by Crisp. You can see Huggan 4.5 seconds behind them now, not closing up too much, but Crisp not really making too much of an impression on the back of Crisp, but staying within that 1 second range.
Yeah, surprised to see Chris just not able to get a little more performance out of these cars. There was only a lap difference between either of these two when they came through for their second stops. They knew they'd already got the tyres done at their first tour through the lane, but Byron Phillips doing a fantastic job just maintaining the pressure. He's got some lap traffic now ahead. It looks like one of the XRC cars which are out of the same stable that Martin Crisp was there. I don't think we'll see any interference from either of these guys. You see that car just pull right to the side, so fantastic sportsmanship there. And this battle is going to continue raging on for the final few minutes as they work their way down in turn 10 at the moment. See whether Chris is able to make a little bit of an inroad under brakes, brings the gap down marginally. So yeah, rotors on that forward, glowing bright red, just not able to get the drive out to keep that gap down.
Remember, Crisp and Huggan going for the Pro Championship as here is Fieben. Oh, he's going to miss the corner, surely. Yeah, there you go. Christel misses the corner. And Fieben's pressure in the end telling he's up into 10th position now, which is some recovery for Fieben. It was. He kept on getting close into this, and Christel just was moving across a little bit in the braking zone, wasn't he? And tried to kind of scare Fieben to the inside, but it was Christel in the end who ran wide, who made the mistake. Yeah, of course, Crisp and Huggan going for the Pro Championship, remember. So Crisp cannot afford to have a non-finish. He needs to get some points, but be a little bit disappointed perhaps if he only outscores Huggan by a handful of points, considering that they did start a few. I don't know, you know what? Huggan started actually ahead of Crisp. Huggan was falling down the pit, wasn't he, earlier on? He started in 7th place, dropped down to 10th or 11th in the early stages, and then has really come back rejuvenated as this race has transpired. But Crisp still in 5th place. We are moving on to the penultimate lap of the race. Ross Rizzo with... ooh, that'll be tight, actually. I think Rizzo will force one more lap after this by about 2 seconds. It depends how strict iRacing wants to be. I think we will get one more lap in after this, and that might just force everyone to go for one more lap than they expected.
Yeah, that could be an interesting one, just to make sure everyone's got enough fuel on board. There's a few off tracks for someone going through. This fight between Specchio and Whiting still red hot. We've got a lock up there for Specchio. He gets back underway. But Whiting doing a really standout job to withhold that pressure. It should be okay as they work their way up to head around the old alternate pits there. Very good. Nathan Huppert's also still recovering after that early lap 1 contact. He's managed to get the Fusion Sim racing car up to 9th position, so real standout drive for him there, and definitely ruining what could have been after that earlier little lose on lap 1 down in turn 3 there, which saw him relegated right to the back of the field and a little bit of damage on that car.
Yeah, I wonder if Hartputs, because we'll probably only get interviews with the top 3, but I wonder if Hartputs regrets that strategy a little bit. Remember, he came into the pits really early with both of his pit stops. Just wonder maybe if it would have been better going for a more conventional strategy. It would have meant he'd had to make a few more overtakes, but as we are going to have to check out, we're not even at 1 hour 30, but still, we are going to see Ross Rizzo take another race victory. It is 4 out of 4 for him in the endurance meetings. A remarkable season for Ross Rizzo, a remarkable season for Trak Esports continues, and whilst it's not crucial for his points tally, it's crucial for his pride, and it's crucial to take off points from Craig Edwards as well, who finishes a very earnest 2nd place. Trent Thomas rounds out the podium, and that will help Trak Esports in the Teams Championship. Phillips is going to hold off Crisp in what was a really fun battle for 4th position, and he does take home that 4th place. Nice job there from Byron Phillips. Crisp in 5th place outscores Huggan in that Pro Championship. Glaspool will finish in 7th place, Butler in 8th, and Hupperts with a decent recovery to finish in 9th. Phoeben rounding out the top 10. Christopher Hughes is going to be top of the rookie drivers. Remember, he qualified up in 11th place, dropped outside the top 20 in the very early stages, but just strong pace for the XRC driver ever since, and he absolutely demolishes the rookie class. In fact, I think he was the only driver to finish on the lead lap. Maybe Garoich finished on the lead lap, but well done to Hughes in 13th place. That's strong for his championship, of course, which he is battling with. In fact, actually, he's a little bit further back as Hughes in that championship. Might actually still be able to battle Warwick and Puce, actually, because Crispy Hughes in that, because his drop scores is a little bit better than those other drivers. So yeah, that is a tight championship, and that is big points for Christopher Hughes to win that rookie race. Kogan will finish in 21st place and the last of the drivers on the lead lap. Well, I think that was one of the best races of the season. I think, despite the fact that we didn't have many cars out there, Daniel, that was one of the best strategic races I've seen. That was exhilarating to see the lap times of Rizzo, lap after lap, trying to build up that gap. We weren't sure he was going to be ahead at that final pit stop, and Rizzo just about did enough. And that was hard earned, but you got to feel bad for Edwards, who still is lacking a race win this season. He did nothing wrong. I think against any other opponent, he would have won that race, that Edwards, but Rizzo, just with that little bit too much, he ends up on top again.
Yeah, it was a really strong drive from both of those two. Actually, a whole top 3 did a really solid job out there tonight just to keep those cars in the right direction and go. Rizzo potentially could have had that lead a little further out if he didn't make that little mistake that we saw on the exit of the first pit stop when he came out on the fresh tyres. He had that little half spin which cost him around 4 seconds, so potentially could have maybe extended that gap a little bit further, but it was a fantastic drive to come back nonetheless. Take nothing away from Edwards, though. He did a fantastic job, controlled the race very early on. I can imagine the slight sinking feeling in the heart he would have felt just to see Rizzo emerge at the end of the pit straight as they completed their second round of stops. But fantastic drive for him, and really shows that Fusion and a lot of these guys now really start to come to grips with that C8 and they're getting the most out of it.
Yeah, it does seem to be a better car than what it did at the start of the season. So yeah, good job from all of them. I think we can go through your final results for this evening's race, round 9 of the season. Also, is with another race win, 2 seconds clear of Craig Edwards. Trent Thomas, great job from him. I mean, he was 7 seconds behind, but Rizzo and Edwards were, full throttle throughout, and Thomas was as well. So Thomas was probably only on average about 0.2 of a second slower than Rizzo, but over the course of 90 minutes did extend to 7 seconds. Byron Phillips for superb 4th place, not that far off as well, 35 seconds, not that big a gap. Barton Crisp was in 5th place ahead of his teammates and championship rival Tom Huggan. James Glasspool finished in 7th place, then was Jesse Butler, Nathan Huppers and Timothy Eben rounding out the top 10. Robert Crisdale, Chris Whitesall and Christopher Hughes were in 11th, 12th and 13th. Hughes top of the rookie drivers. Then it was Michael Whiting, Aaron Specchier, Shane Bowen, Grant Madderford, Blake Delaney was in 18th, and then it was Simon Nicholson, who had a real shocker out there, although wasn't lucky, was only a second behind those 2 drivers in the end. Hayden Smith was in 20th, then was Lee Cogan, Scott Forsyth, Nicholas Garoich, Paul Warwick, John Hughes, and Chris Pellet, pretty much the only retiree out there. They do get fast pairs, so there's not really any excuse to retire, but there you go. 25 drivers reaching the checkered flag. So we can get an interview with some of the drivers now. And first up will be Ross Rizzo. And, well, congratulations, Ross, because that was a pretty great race. We really enjoyed it up in the commentary box. First up, you made that tricky for yourself. You did not need to make that as tricky for yourself. What was going on with the spin? Because if it weren't for that, I feel like you would have had a much easier time to get that race win than what you did.
I definitely thought the race was gone at that point. So when I came out in front, I was, all fists in the air and thinking, how has this happened? And I immediately felt for Craig because he'd driven sublime all race, and for there to be a second in it in a 90-minute race that went full green flag. I mean, it's a testament to the series. It's a testament to the effort of the guys who compete, and it's truly a testament, certainly to FSR, who have made the call, who brought the Corvette to life in the second half of the season. And I thought it was time for their breakthrough, but I guess it wasn't to be. And just an amazing race, an amazing turn of events.
So did you have any idea kind of what the gap was going to be then? Because we were watching in the contributors pretty much for 20 minutes. We were just looking at your lap times when you went for the overcut. We were looking at the lap times, and you were lapping half a second a lap faster than Craig, hence why you managed to get ahead of him. Did you really have no idea that you were going to be ahead of him?
No, I had no idea. I couldn't see him on the relative, and the leaderboard was kind of the other leaderboard where I try to see the gap wasn't really cooperating. But I knew I lost about 6 or so seconds in the spin, and at that point before the spin, I was at 7 seconds behind. So I knew I had to get it back down to about that because I knew the difference would be fuel. But I knew by the time Craig pitted, I didn't think I'd done anywhere near enough, and Craig just said he overfilled the car quite a bit actually. So I think that's where part of the difference was.
Yeah, perhaps so. Talk us through, we're doing this tab, we're going in anti-chronological order, but talk us through that first stint, because you were behind Craig for quite a bit there. You were a second behind, and then you seemed to get within half a second. What was the logic there? I mean, were you going for a move? Were you saving fuel, or were you just pushing as hard as you could?
Yeah, I was testing the waters a fair bit. It did get out to about 1.5 at one point, and then I steadily closed it in. Then fuel safe for a bit, had a crack, realized how hard I would have had to push to make the move work. So then went back to fuel saving, and then I made a tiny mistake, and then had to spend the rest of the stint just before the pit stop to close the gap back. And by the time I closed in, I saw it was half race distance. So I thought, no better time than the present to make the pit stop. And the logic in the long stop was to try and come out of traffic, come out in clear air and just pump in the quick lap times, and then make up the difference with the shorter stop at the end. And I wasn't expecting to come out in so much traffic, and then the spin just made it even worse. So yeah, the odds were stacked against me after just one mistake. But somehow it came good in the end.
Yeah, congratulations tonight, Ross. It was 4 out of 4 in terms of endurance meetings, which I don't believe has ever been done. I doubt it will happen anytime soon again. You must be pretty pleased with that. I mean, I was saying before that you didn't actually need to turn up today, because obviously you get a drop score with the Enduro, so you could have not turned up today and you would have still got a perfect score in the Enduros. But 4 out of 4, that must feel pretty epic to lock out the endurance meetings like that.
Yeah, that was the goal. I knew I had nothing to lose because the round was going to be dropped anyway, but thought, why not throw everything at it? And incredibly, it turned out the way it did. So thanks very much to Trick Esports, Trick Custom Fabrications, and Pro Sim Gear, and also to Alex Bird, who's been helping us trying to get some pace out of the cars this week, and he's been put in a monumental effort to help us. So thank you so much, Alex. And also, there were no penalties today, so well done to the entire field, and thank you to Race Control. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks for having a chat with us, Ross. And best of luck for next week.
Thanks very much, guys.
Ross Vizay, your championship leader, your race winner, driver for Trick Esports there. Congratulations to him. We have got second place man in the commentary box now, and that is Craig Edwards. He's standing by with Daniel.
Thanks, Tim. Craig, congratulations on another stellar drive tonight, mate. You guys must be wondering what you need to do to get the Fusion Sim Racing car now up on the top step, because you led all the way. You got the perfect start, managed to get a really nice little comfortable gap, held it through the first round of pit stops, and then as all the second ones came through, I could feel the heart drop as you worked across the line. But let's start with the start of the race. How did you find the car out there? We know it was a bit of a touch and go one earlier on. This tonight being the night, really cold track conditions, the cars were sliding around a lot more by the looks.
Yeah, but actually with the colder conditions, the Corvette was probably a little more comfortable. But it really just has the one pace that you can go. So you find that, slot into the rhythm, and you can sort of keep it up the whole way through, which is a good way to go. And the race was panning out pretty well. I think my first stop worked a lot better than Ross's. Had a lot of clear air, some nice quick laps, and like a short run to the next pit stop. But this season's been definitely just a string of little 1%ers that don't go my way. And tonight, our software tools that tell us how much fuel to put in just had it completely wrong. I put about 6-7 litres more than I needed to, and that's nearly 3 seconds stationary time or something. So I was watching the relative to Ross grow and grow and grow as he's punching out these 45s, something the Corvette can only do on like the first flying lap. And I was just crestfallen when I saw him come out in front. I knew that there's just no way I was going to be able to challenge him in those last 4 laps, and just slotted in, took another P2. It's not a disaster, but just wondering what I got to do to win one this season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, the pace is really starting to come to yourselves, and a lot of the C8 drivers now, it looks like you guys have really started to unlock the driving style necessary to get the most out of this car. And obviously, we've got 3 more events still in the championship, off to Okayama next time around. Probably going to be a circuit that might maybe suit the C8 a little bit more point and shoot, which we know has been relatively good for this car. So how are you thinking your chances are for Okayama?
I don't like that circuit, so probably won't go very well. But we'll see. I don't know. Some of those the sort of sweeping corners that are at Okayama, they would really suit the C8. It seems to have a good amount of aero in those medium speed corners, so it could be all right. I'm more looking forward to Spa personally, the round after. My favourite track, and hopefully we can really target for a win there. I want to get one this season. It'd be nice.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, we know the winner's knocking on the door there, and you guys definitely find a way to get through on it. You got a tough competitor in Trak Esports and Ross Rizzo to get around first, but judging by the pace that you guys are starting to extract from the car, certainly only a matter of time. But before we let you go, enjoy the celebrations for tonight. Is there anyone you'd like to thank?
Yeah, absolutely. Big thanks to Fusion Sim Racing, my team, and our sponsors, simrigs.com, Psychonic Solutions, Eclipse Signage, and Daryl Carter Plastering. Big thanks to them.
Fantastic, Craig. Again, congrats on the results, mate, and look forward to hopefully having a chat with you out at Okayama.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
That was Craig Edwards, your second place finisher tonight. Finally, we've got Trent Thomas in for a chat with us. Congratulations, Trent. I know you've won a race already this season, but dare I say that was a better performance than when you won that race earlier on the season, because you're totally faultless, 7 seconds off the lead. I mean, it was literally just a tenth of a second between you and the two guys ahead for that entire race. You must be pleased with that performance.
Yeah, I was actually. I was pretty consistent, especially in my first stint. I just didn't quite have the pace to stick with those front guys, but I had enough pace to pull away from the guys behind me. So it's kind of a bit of a lonely race in the middle there. So I ended up being a bit of a race against myself. But really, really happy with the way that race turned out. I think I left it a little bit too late to sort of put the pace on. After the pit stops, I basically dropped my pace by like half a second almost, pretty much matching the front guys from there. But yeah, by then it was just too late. The gap was too big to pull back.
What was the logic for your pit stops? I believe you pitted about midway and then didn't put and then put a decent amount of fuel in. I mean, was that the strategy from the start, or were you changing your strategy as the race progressed?
Yeah, it did change a little bit. The plan was originally basically get halfway, 45 minutes, throw in about 2/3 of the fuel that I need to get home, and then obviously the rest of the fuel after that. But pace felt pretty good. The tyres didn't really have much drop off. They had the sort of initial drop off, and then they were really, really stable. So I sort of extended the first stop just by a little bit, and ended up putting in almost all the fuel. And at the end there, I only had to put in 4 litres. Again, the last stop was a little bit early, but I just felt I needed to come in and sort of see where I was in relation to Craig ahead, and whether or not I could really push to try and get that gap down at all. And it turned out not really.
In the in the teams championship, now you guys going into this round, it was 14,410 points against 14,209 points. So barely anything between yourselves and XRC. Is that the main focus now for you to the end of the season, or are there some more kind of personal goals that you'd like to achieve in these final 3 rounds?
Definitely, team championship is the priority at the moment. More podiums is obviously a good thing. That means we're scoring points. So, but I think there's only 2 of us in this split tonight. So again, we're going to possibly cop a little bit in the team's points. But yeah, the focus moving forward is just trying to keep scoring as many team points as we can.
Absolutely. And what were your thoughts on Okayama next time? I imagine that's going to be quite a weak circuit for the BMW.
Well, it's weird. Like the BMW's been struggling on the high speed stuff, so I think Spa is going to be a bit of a struggle. But Okayama, I think it's got a bit more of the shorter, punchier sort of corners, which this track here tonight kind of did as well. And the BMW wasn't too bad, so I'm hoping Okayama will be not too bad for the BMW.
Well, best of luck for that one, Trent. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Thank you very much. Just for the boys at Trak Esports, and our sponsors, Trak Custom Fabrications and Pro Sim Gear.
Awesome. Thanks for the chat, Trent, and best of luck for next week.
Thank you very much.
Trent Thomas there for Trak Esports, your 3rd place driver tonight. It's going to be exciting, that team's championship. We didn't talk too much about it, but yeah, XRC and Trak Esports are properly close in that one. We'll certainly come down to the wire. Daniel, like we've mentioned it a couple of times, Okayama next. I'm not a big fan of Motegi. I do really like Okayama. It's a circuit that, for a while, we weren't really using, but in the last few months we've used it quite a bit. AOSC have used it. I know the Formula 3.5 Championship have used it. We've used it in AFL-TC. We've used it in AFL-GT as well. So we visit it a decent amount of time now. And of course, this kind of alternate calendar means that we're going to visit Okayama for the first time in a few seasons. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. It usually works pretty well in GTE cars, but I imagine that's going to be an important qualifying to get yourself up on that front row of the grid, because overtaking might be at a premium.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're pretty well spot on there. Overtaking is going to be really hard. Unless you get a run onto the main straight, you might be able to sneak one up down the inside into turn one. But you can go too wide through there, and it makes it a little bit difficult. The racing should be fantastic nonetheless. Obviously, we've got some very quick contenders throughout the course of the field. Can Rizzo add another one to the tally? Only time will tell on that one, but certainly looking very good. I think Fusion Sim Racing with a solid chance to try and knock those guys off, along with the likes of XRC, Mach 1 getting up amongst it as well. So it should be a really interesting one. I think qualifying, as you say, will be all critical, and no doubt for the guys. Similar to this week, we saw a lot jump in, do the pre-qualifying route rather than qualifying on the night, which did see some shake-ups, obviously a little bit different track conditions and not having as many cars out there to contend with. So that could be an option as well for the guys that want to try and get up in towards the top split. So be interesting to see. We're only 3 races to go to deciding our season 13 champion, so not much left on the clock for these guys that want to get in and amongst it. So it's coming down to the wire.
It sure is. Remember to check out the next round of the championship then at Okayama. We've still got a few championships to decide. Rizzo with a healthy advantage, but today's race win by no means ends the championship. Sure, it wasn't great for Edwards to not get that race win, but a second place will be decent points for him. He will be able to close up a little bit, saying that Rizzo will have to drop one of his endurance meetings. So that's still alive, and the Pro Championship is still very much alive. The Amateur is a little bit more solid, but the Rookie as well could be changing either way. So 3 rounds to go in this season 13 of the Trak Racer GT series. Big thanks to Trak Racer for sponsoring this video. If you're looking to upgrade your rig, go to Trak Racer. Got some fantastic rigs and seats and stands and yeah, monitor stands and all sorts of stuff for that. So certainly do check out Trak Racer. Also check out Acuta Solutions as well. You also sponsor the AOSC Super Series as well. And also thanks to Race Management Service as well for helping us set up these sessions, because quite a complex set of rules in this championship, but it's best for the competitors, and without Race Management Service we literally could not do it. So big thanks to them, and check out their Facebook page as well, especially if you are looking to organize any events yourself on iRacing. Big thanks to Daniel Leet and Scott Newton as well. Big thanks to the drivers, big thanks to the stewards, and thanks to you as well for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like on it, and if you wouldn't mind, please check out our social media as well at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. That's all at Apex Racing TV. Subscribe to the channel as well, because we're not broadcasting on the Esports Network anymore. So if you stumbled across this, maybe in your recommended, and you clicked on it and you didn't realize I was actually on Apex Racing TV rather than the Esports Network, subscribe to Apex Racing TV, because we're not broadcasting on the Esports Network anymore. The Esports Network is no more at all. So certainly do subscribe to Apex Racing TV. We would thoroughly appreciate it. But yeah, from me, Sam Fitzpatrick, from Daniel Leet, and from Scott Newton, we are going to say goodbye. It is 9 out of 9 for Tricky Esports now, and Rizzo takes another step towards the title. We'll see you next time at Okayama.